Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women who are reshaping our world. Coming up, how the fight against sexism and misogyny online has just got that much tougher due to Meta's decision to drop fact checkers from Facebook and Instagram. Also, I'll be talking to American feminist writer Shamali about her latest book, The Resilience Myth, which questions the way we cope with trauma in our lives. And again, where role models are everything, how women scientists in the Democratic Republic of Congo are seeking to encourage teenage girls to follow their path. But first, and the only government minister in the world to be solely tasked with devising public policies to tackle violence against women has herself become the target of violence. It follows comments by billionaire Elon Musk about grooming gangs in the UK and the government's response. British Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips telling the BBC that the disinformation was endangering her life after Musk labelled her as an evil witch and rape genocide apologist while calling for her to be jailed. It also comes as Mark Zuckerberg announced Meta were abandoning their fact-checkers to be replaced by community notes, where commenting on the accuracy of the posts is left to users. But the decision could have a huge effect on women, as less fact-checking most likely means less protection for them online, as Leo McGuinn explains.
After nearly 9 years, Meta are abandoning their independent fact-checking policy, a decision announced by Mark Zuckerberg himself.
First, we're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US.
It's fair to say that the announcement has not gone down well in all quarters. The co-chair of Meta's oversight board, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, has said that she is very concerned about how Meta's decision will affect women in particular. According to experts, hate speech can often lead to real-life harm, and the lack of fact-checking measures could open the door to more online abuse.
But what this systemic shift does is it further emboldens and enables abusers, including those who seek to incite offline harm, or those who practice a kind of long-range, lower-level form of harassment and abuse, which can be equally debilitating in terms of psychological impacts, in terms of a chilling effect on democratic participation and deliberation.
Others have accused Zuckerberg of letting down his users under the guise of free speech.
Mark Zuckerberg says it's a free speech issue. That's completely wrong. This is about safety. And Facebook, as the largest social media platform globally, has responsibilities to every one of us on the platform to protect us. And yet, it's almost like when you walk onto that platform, it's like you walking into a building that can fall down on you at any time.
At the same time, Meta have also updated their community guidelines. The new version has removed previous restrictions on referring to women as household objects or property, leading campaigners to fear a spike in hate speech in the new Meta world.
Now, with rising global instability, courtesy of increasing conflict and the impact of climate change, the word resilience is being used a lot these days, to the point it almost sounds like a badge of honour, a concept which celebrates individualism over community. Shamali is an American author, activist and feminist whose latest book, The Resilience Myth, raises questions as to how we view coping after a trauma. She joins me now from Washington. Sarai, thank you so much for your time. You talk about how a series of events in your personal life, which almost became a perfect storm, prompted you to write the book. So do you mind telling me why?
I wrote this book after writing a book about sort of anger, women's anger, global cataclysm, but just started writing it before COVID hit. And in between, lots of different things happened in my personal life that conspired, as is the case with many people, with the pandemic. And what was so striking to me throughout was this narrative of resilience, of how to teach your children how to be resilient, of how you should learn to be resilient. And throughout it all, the individualism was striking, the internalization was striking, and the absence of the notion of care or an ethic of care, connection, community, mutual support was really striking. And so I ended up writing this book.
And how much does this concept of resilience harm us, particularly as women?
You know, I think that if you think about this idea as an internalization, as a strength of mind, as a characteristic of defined by a very nebulous idea about strength, what you end up with as a concept is a highly masculinized worldview idea of what it takes to suffer and then to recover from that suffering. And so even the notion, for example, of an event that intrudes on our lives, causes trauma or cataclysm, and then we are supposed to bounce back from that, that forecloses the idea that you might have experienced chronic harms, persistent stress, intergenerational trauma, the sort of slow violence of living with inequality as relevant. And so that notion of time, that notion of individual recovery, really washes out the context of how we're experiencing crisis today.
Yet, Sarai, how much is this concept of resilience tied up with American culture in the sense to be a winner, you need to be resilient, something which we see very much promoted by Hollywood?
That's absolutely the case. And, with globalization, it's very hard to tease these cultural currents out because we have really a global culture. And one of the interesting things that happened about 20 years ago was that in Hollywood in particular, the economics started to not look very good. And so exporting movies, exporting American ideas and narratives became prevalent because it was very profitable. And part of that export was to use a kind of hyper-violent, masculine, post-9/11 narratives of strength and resilience that could resonate across the world. Because masculinity itself is a sort of lingua franca. And so in that notion of domination, competition, protection of your values, all of that gets wrapped up in the ideal of resilience. And yes, it is American, a sort of bootstrapping narrative, survival of the fittest, frontier mentality, but it's also a narrative that resonates with people everywhere.
When it comes to resilience, a lot of it is based on individualism, as you write, as opposed to talking about other ways of coping with trauma. I see towards the end of the book, you write about the need to recognise cognitive flexibility. Could you explain what that actually means?
Absolutely. I think optimism is a good example. We associate various traits with resilience. One of them is this, again, amorphous mental toughness. Another is persistence. Another is optimism. But in fact, optimism can, in fact, lead to illusions and be distracting from the need to come up with plans to assess risk. And so instead of just thinking, as an individual, I should be more optimistic, it's a lot more useful to have the cognitive flexibility to know when pessimism is necessary, when you can use optimism and pessimism strategically.
So do we need to eliminate the word resilience entirely from the English language dictionary?
No, not at all. Obviously, we're a resilient species. That's why we're here. I think we need to really interrogate our assumptions about what resilience is, to think about the relationships and the care that sustain our ability to have the personal traits that we might think of as being resilient, to adopt that cognitive flexibility that we talked about. Absolutely, we need to be resilient. I just think that the worldview that one mode of resilience sustains is hurting us more than it's helping us at the moment.
Sarai, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annette. It's lovely to be here.
And finally, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, women rarely pursue scientific careers due to gender stereotypes. So some of the country's leading scientists are now trying to encourage more teenage girls to enter the field of science, as our team on the ground report.
At the Institute for Biomedical Research, it's Student Visit Day.
Bonjour, bienvenue.
Professor Jean-Jacques Muyembe, a renowned virologist in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is sharing his experience and expertise with young students interested in his discipline. The veteran scientist is also hoping the exchange can encourage more female students to follow in his footsteps.
In our recruiting, we make an effort to give priority, if necessary, if the standards are the same, to women.
Few women pursue higher scientific learning in DR Congo, where only 10% of female university students study STEM subjects. Marie-Claire Yonju is a microbiologist and a trailblazer. In this shipping container, which she transformed into a laboratory, lie the results of 50 years of her research into cassava, work for which she received no grants nor funding. Despite her own professional struggles, Yonju is eager to pass on her knowledge.
We encouraged her to continue her studies. She's just enrolled at university and is now working with us.
The 70-year-old still teaches at the University of Kinshasa. She says her greatest source of pride is having opened up a way for young women in science.
Back in our day, there were 16 of us in the 4th year. But in the 6th year, we were only 4. And when I see that the number of girls has now increased, I'm really pleased.
Gender stereotypes and cultural expectations surrounding marriage are still obstacles for many Congolese women considering careers in STEM.
Most of the teachers who taught me at college were men, so it's a bit rare to find women working in this field. I'd like to be one of the women who masters this field.
Today, Marie-Claire Yonju always wraps up her lessons with the same slogan, a play on grammatical gender rules in the French language. The word science, she says, is a feminine word.
And that's it for this edition. So until our next show, bye for now.